Hi everyone, welcome to ESOP Radio. Thanks for joining episode 1 of the ESOP Boot Camp. Our goal is to give you, the owner, CEO, or CFO of a successful business, the lowdown on ESOPs in a quick, straightforward method because your time is valuable. I'm Trevor Gilmore, CEO of Menke.
And I'm Ben Spadt, Investment Banking with Menke. Since 1974, Menke has been a full-service ESOP advisor, and we've seen it all from, capital raises to structuring ESOPs, regulatory compliance, to calculations of value and mergers and acquisitions. We've created thousands of ESOPs, and as an ESOP ourselves, we're ESOP native.
Our first episode, What is an ESOP?, will demystify what this 4-letter acronym really is. And guess what? It's not ESOP fables. We will answer 3 questions today. Number 1, what is an ESOP? Number 2, how do ESOPs differ from M&A, meaning mergers and acquisitions, and private equity? And number 3, why do ESOPs exist in the first place? All right, Ben, let's dive in.
Absolutely. So first and foremost, let's define ESOP. The letters ESOP stand for Employee Stock Ownership Plan. And in essence, it's a qualified retirement plan, much like a 401k. So the IRS and the Department of Labor keep tabs on what's happening with that plan. In 1974, under ERISA, which governs all retirement plans, a law was created that made modern U.S. retirement plans legal. So the 401k, for instance, and ESOPs. ESOPs are essentially an owner of the company. It's a trust that acts on behalf of the individuals or the employees in the plan, and it can own anywhere from 1% to 100% of the company. We've seen them all across the board. They are a fair market value buyer of the company, and by fair market value, we mean the IRS definition, which means willing and able buyer, willing and able seller that negotiate for a price based on financial fundamentals. In other words, it's rooted in reality. Sometimes you'll read in the paper companies buying companies for a 10x multiple or a 12x multiple. Those are more strategic buyers, and fair market value is a component of that, but they're saying you're worth extra because of some strategic objective. So ESOPs buy at fair market value. And it's really the only qualified retirement plan that can be leveraged or can borrow money. And that's where the fun begins, really. So with that, the ESOPs can be used to cash out owners of small to medium-sized companies. Think roughly around 30 plus employees. We have clients that have, that 30 per employee threshold all the way up to 10,000. And so that's ESOP in a nutshell. But Trevor, do you want to talk about how ESOPs differ from things like M&A?
Thanks, Ben. Yeah, and definitely more on value later for sure. A lot to uncover there. You'll see in a future episode, we'll cover cash flows and value and all that good stuff. I'll now cover how ESOPs differ from M&A, private equity, or gifting stock. There's 8 key points here. Number 1, ESOPs are a buyer of your company. Number 2, so are acquirers, including private equity. So when I mean acquirers, I mean it could be a competitor. It could be a private equity firm. It could be in a company that is in a completely different industry but wants exposure to you, your brand, and your clients. So the ESOP fits into that category as an acquirer. Number 3, ESOPs allow the company to remain independent and reward employees. Compare that to M&A or private equity. If you go down either of those routes, meaning M&A or private equity, your company will not remain independent as it is today. That is a big distinction. The question to answer, which we like to ask all of our prospects here, is your company better off independent or part of a bigger player? Do you have a large moat? If the answer is yes, an ESOP might be compelling. Number 4, how can an ESOP buy my company? And the answer, as Ben alluded to earlier, is leverage. technically the company's cash flows are used to guarantee the ESOP. And that's how the whole ESOP thing works. Think company cash flows, that both ties to value, it ties to making the whole thing work. There are two main financing options out there for ESOPs, which is bank or seller financing. And that's very similar to what we see in the M&A and private equity world. And we'll cover those in a future episode. Number 5, ESOPs usually have more tax benefits than a third-party sale. The ability for the seller to defer capital gains permanently and for the company to operate tax-free. So those are two big things that are unique to ESOPs. We'll cover this in a future episode as well. And number 6, you can stay involved with the company after selling to an ESOP. So we see this with our client base. A founder, or maybe it's the second or third generation owner, and so on, wants some liquidity. We set up the ESOP, make the whole thing happen, and they're still acting as the CEO of the company and probably on the board as well. So there's no requirement that you must exit. If you compare that to a third-party sell, meaning mergers, acquisitions, or private equity, you will likely want out after a few months because you have a new overlord, in essence, that is dictating a lot of things. Your company's not independent anymore. So you talk to friends, out there who have gone down that path, and more often than not, they will tell you, hey, I stuck around for the minimum amount of time to get my earnout, and then I was done. ESOP is not going to have that same outcome. A lot of flexibility there. And number 7, one recent trend we're seeing is a structure where ESOPs come in and buy a minority stake, meaning less than 50%, and a private equity firm or a family office, which basically is a family that has a ton of money and creates an investment arm with professionals that basically go out and buy companies according to their family's investment thesis, buying the controlling stake. So we are seeing more of these hybrids, so it's not either or. Whereas the prior points we were kind of saying either or. We are seeing this hybrid where you have an ESOP minority shareholder and a control interest held by the PE or the family office. And lastly, number 8, do not confuse ESOPs with gifting stock to employees. Some people say that. I'll talk to a prospect and they'll say, oh, if I go ESOP, I'm just giving the employees the company, and so on. And that is not rooted in any sort of reality. ESOP is a qualified retirement plan, and the employees must work smart and hard to earn it. The stock is allocated over a long period of time, and you aren't gifting the stock to the employees. They have to work hard for it, and also the future ESOP value is reflected in that reality. Yeah, so Ben, I covered 8 points here about the key distinctions between ESOPs, mergers, acquisitions, and private equity. Let's go ahead and kick it over to you, and you can cover why ESOPs exist in the first place.
Yeah, I love those examples, those 8 points that you made. And truly, ESOPs exist because retirement plans like the 401k can buy public company stock or bonds, mutual funds, things like that. But one thing that is excluded are those private company stock, private company shares, private company stock that you alluded to that, perhaps family offices want to buy the majority stake, but you can't really utilize your 401k or something like that to buy companies, private company stock. So why not let them, private companies, use a retirement plan to acquire shares of the company, provide some or all liquidity to the owners, and then allow the company to stay independent. So as you alluded to, there's a competitor's not swooping in and buying you up and perhaps changing the way you're structured, changing the way you treat your AR or AP, switch out your board, things like that. You get to remain independent, remain in control. And so ESOPs, they were a creative solution to that age-old problem. Who's going to buy my company? And the answer can be, and often is, employees. But the rank and file employees can't finance the purchase of the business. And so that's where the ESOP comes in, which can buy some or all of the company and solve those 3 things: liquidity, succession, and motivation. Those employees then own the company in effect. And a lot of times we see that people treat things that they own better than things that they rent. And, there's often the example of the rental car or renting a home.
Yeah, when was the last time you washed a rental car?
That's a good point. Unless it was required. I think sometimes on Turo they do require that.
The desert, right?
But so prior to ESOP, so there was just kind of a little bit of, here and there providing ownership to employees. Trevor, I think there's one specific example, but I can't remember right off the top of my head.
Yeah, so you go way back to the 1950s, and this is sort of the granddaddy of all the ESOPs. A company was called Peninsula Newspapers on the San Francisco Peninsula, where Silicon Valley is today. I think they're headquartered like San Mateo, if I recall correctly. Yeah. And an attorney called Louis Kelso, based in San Francisco, and he's actually who our founder started his ESOP career with, our founder John Menke. They had a client, Peninsula Newspapers, that needed a succession plan. So the overall owner of the company, who had majority control, said, hey, I want to sell the company. Who best to sell it to but the employees? But the employees don't have their own money. So how can that happen? Answer is an ESOP. So that was largely credited with the first ESOP out there, and that happened before ESOPs became legal. For you ERISA code heads out there, ESOPs became legal in 1974, Labor Day in 1974. President Ford signed the ERISA legislation, making them legal along with 401ks, and so on, the modern retirement structure. Yeah, so they're definitely unique. And, you think retirement plan, this is the only one that can use leverage, meaning it can use leverage in conjunction with the company cash flows to buy the company.
Excellent. I forget the details on that, but that was a perfect summation. And, that signing that legislation in 1974 by Gerald Ford was, did start a massive trend back then and to all the way to today. In a good number of states, there's an employee ownership either center or organization that helps promote employee ownership and ESOPs. We find that it's a bipartisan tool. There's a lot of good things that are working for us in this industry, and also as a succession tool to provide you that liquidity and an exit.
Absolutely. You give skin in the game. Guess what? People might have that ownership mentality kick in, right? Now that's what you want, right? You don't want hired hands. You don't want someone who doesn't wash a rental car, right? You want that thing gleaming, right? And performing. Yeah. So that's it for episode 1. We covered 3 key things today. Number 1, what is an ESOP? Number 2, how do ESOPs differ from M&A and private equity? And number 3, why do ESOPs exist in the first place? Thank you for joining us today. Connect with us on LinkedIn. You can find us, Trevor Gilmore, Ben Spadt, and also ESOP Radio or our Menke page. And of course, our website, menke.com, has real-life case studies of our clients, and we post a lot of ESOP news on there as well. Reach out to us to learn more about our ESOP fit analysis. That is the first step in assessing if an ESOP is right for you. Have an awesome day. Join us for episode 2. Is your company a good ESOP candidate? Take care, everyone.
Thank you. Bye-bye.